Letting go doesn't always mean forgetting, because the human mind and heart don't operate on the same rules as the physical world. You can walk away from someone, you can stop talking, you can cut off the phone calls, you can unfollow them on every platform, but the mind has its own storage system. It doesn't delete, it archives. It doesn't erase, it preserves. And in the quiet hours of the night, in the stillness when the world is asleep, those memories have a way of resurfacing. When someone lets you go, they may think they are free, but the echo of who you are begins to live inside their thoughts in ways they never expected. The truth is, when you have been part of someone's journey, when you've shared laughter, tears, and countless moments that shape both of you, those experiences leave imprints that cannot simply vanish. The heart doesn't work like a switch that turns off because a relationship ended. The connection might shift, but the mark remains. Letting go is an action, but forgetting is almost impossible when a person has touched you at the level of your soul. That's why so many people walk away physically, but find themselves revisiting the same memories, replaying the same conversations, reliving the same feelings that once made them feel alive. There are people who believe that by letting someone go, they are releasing themselves too. They think, if I don't see them, if I don't talk to them, then I will be free. But the paradox of the mind is this: what you try to push away often grows louder. The more you attempt to suppress, the more persistent the thought becomes. And so, even though they let you go, they never really let you leave their inner world. Your smile, your energy, your presence continues to show up in their memory bank uninvited. They remember the way you made them feel, even if they don't want to. This is because people don't remember things, they remember emotions. They don't replay events, they replay how those events made them feel. If you once gave someone peace, they will miss it every time they face chaos. If you once gave them joy, they will think of you whenever life feels heavy. If you once gave them love, they will carry that imprint like a scar they can't heal. They may not tell you, they may not admit it. They may not even allow themselves to say it out loud. But you remain alive in their inner world because the energy you left cannot be erased by distance or time. And here's what people often underestimate. Forgetting isn't about losing memory. Forgetting is about replacing meaning. When someone lets you go but cannot forget you, it is because they haven't found another meaning that can override your presence. They can meet new people. They can fill their time with distractions. They can try to cover up the emptiness with temporary pleasures, but the mind always compares. Every smile, every word, every action of someone new gets weighed against the imprint you left. That is why letting go doesn't always heal. Sometimes it just magnifies what was lost. It's easy to let go of someone who never mattered. It's easy to walk away from someone who never touched you deeply. But when someone has given you pieces of themselves, when they have been part of your becoming, when their presence was woven into your growth, then letting them go is only half the story. The other half is living with the constant reminder of what can never be duplicated. That is why people carry regrets long after relationships have ended. That is why certain names still sting even after years. That is why certain faces still make the heart pause. Because some people are unforgettable, not by choice, but by nature of the impact they had on your life. Letting go in action is different from letting go in spirit. The body can move on, the lips can stop speaking, the hands can stop reaching, but the spirit is not as obedient. The spirit remembers what the body tries to deny. The spirit clings to the significance of the bond and the depth of the exchange and the truth of what was shared. And that's why even when someone claims they are done, even when they present themselves as if they've moved on, there's a lingering space inside them where your name still lives. That's the reason people scroll through old photos, revisit old places, or even play old songs. Not because they are weak, but because their inner world is still tied to the reality of what they once had. Letting go doesn't erase the moments. It only separates the presence from the experience. The experience continues to live on. That's why so many people try to bury themselves in business, because silence has a way of exposing what the heart truly carries. In silence, faces return. In silence, memories breathe. In silence, the mind admits what the ego tries to deny. Unresolved attachment creates silent prisons, because when a person lets go of someone without true closure, what they are really doing is carrying invisible chains into their future. The human heart doesn't simply release its grip because a relationship ends. It holds on to unanswered questions, lingering emotions, and the weight of what should have been said but never was. These attachments are silent because they are not always visible to others. A person can look strong on the outside. They can smile, laugh, and pretend to have moved forward. Yet inside their mind, they are locked in a cell made of regrets, memories, and unfinished conversations that play on repeat. When someone lets you go without resolution, the mind becomes a battlefield between what happened and what could have happened. They replay the last words, wondering if things would be different had they spoken differently. They revisit old memories, trying to identify the exact moment when everything began to fall apart. They wake up in the middle of the night with thoughts that don't let them rest. This is the prison of unresolved attachment. It binds the person not to the present, but to the fragments of the past. Unresolved attachment is heavy because the human mind craves closure. Closure is the seal that allows the soul to rest. Without it, there is constant tension, constant comparison, constant searching. A person can walk into new relationships and still carry the ghost of the one they let go. They compare new smiles to the old ones. They measure new conversations against the ones they once cherished. And without realizing it, they sabotage their own future because their mind is still living in yesterday. This silent imprisonment doesn't only affect how they see others, it affects how they see themselves. Regret starts to whisper, guilt begins to gnaw, and self-doubt becomes a companion they never invited but can't seem to dismiss. When someone lets you go but cannot fully release the emotions attached, every ordinary moment can become a reminder. A song on the radio, a familiar fragrance, a place once visited, even a simple phrase can trigger a flood of emotions they thought were buried. They live with constant reminders, and because they never resolved what they felt, the reminders are not gentle, they are piercing. They may try to suppress it, to push it into the background, but the more they avoid, the stronger it becomes. Suppressed emotions have a way of growing louder over time. This silent prison also has a way of reshaping identity. The person begins to define themselves by what they lost instead of who they are. Their confidence wavers, their choices become clouded, and they begin to fear giving themselves fully again because the memory of unresolved attachment makes them cautious. The prison is not made of walls but of fear, guilt, and longing. They can be free physically, yet enslaved mentally. That is the danger of unresolved bonds. They trap you not in a relationship, but in the memory of it. The most dangerous part of this silent prison is that many people deny it. They refuse to admit that they are still attached because admitting it feels like weakness. So they bury it under business, under distractions, under temporary pleasures. They convince themselves they have moved on. But the truth shows itself in the quiet. It shows itself when they are alone, when the noise dies down, when they close their eyes at night. In those moments, they realize that their heart is still reaching for someone they can no longer touch. Unresolved attachment is like unfinished business. It demands attention until it is faced. No matter how many years pass, the mind continues to circle back. This is why some people still think about someone they haven't seen in decades. The attachment lingers not because of time, but because of meaning. When someone mattered deeply and the chapter ended without clarity, the story remains open in the mind. It doesn't fade, it simply waits unfinished in the corners of memory. And so people find themselves trapped, carrying invisible weight. They may enter new seasons, new jobs, new relationships, but there is always a part of them still living in the old chapter. The smile on their face may convince the world they are free, but the silence of their mind reveals the truth. They are imprisoned by what they could not resolve, by what they could not let go cleanly, by what continues to haunt them in the form of unspoken words and unhealed emotions. The power of presence outlives absence, because what truly stays with people is not the physical closeness, but the invisible energy that was exchanged when you were around. Someone may walk out of your life. They may no longer have access to your time or your body, but they will never be able to erase the way you made them feel. Presence is more than just being in the same room. It is the vibration, the frequency, the imprint that your spirit leaves on another person's inner world. And this is why absence does not always bring freedom. A person can be gone from your sight, but their essence continues to echo in your mind, reminding you of what you once had and what you cannot replace. When you are truly present with someone, you give them more than moments. You give them a piece of your energy. That energy doesn't disappear when you walk away. It lingers. It lingers in their laughter because it was you who once brought it out. It lingers in their habits because you once influenced their choices. It lingers in their way of thinking because your perspective once shaped the way they saw the world. That is why people find themselves missing someone even when they try to move on. The physical body might be absent, but the presence remains deeply alive in their subconscious mind. This is why some people can walk away from you but never forget you. They might try to replace you. They might surround themselves with others. They might distract themselves with noise, but when the noise fades, your presence resurfaces. It lives in their memory. It shows up in their dreams. It appears in their quiet reflections. Because presence is not just about sight, it's about resonance. And resonance doesn't fade with time. It deepens when there is absence, because the void left behind makes the memory of what once filled it feel even more powerful. Think of the moments when you touched someone's life in a way that nobody else could. Maybe you brought peace into their chaos. Maybe you gave them encouragement when they were drowning in doubt. Maybe you saw their value when the world ignored them. Those moments are not forgotten. They live on as anchors in the other person's heart, and even after you are gone, they will always remember who gave them that feeling. The power of presence is so strong that it becomes a silent teacher long after the physical connection has ended. Presence also carries a weight of authenticity. You cannot fake energy. A person can fake words, they can fake gestures, they can fake appearances, but they cannot fake the feeling that someone gives them. If you made someone feel seen, safe, loved, or inspired, that feeling becomes attached to your name in their subconscious. Every time they crave that feeling, their mind recalls you. Every time they lack that feeling, their heart aches for you. This is why people struggle to forget those who were once deeply present in their lives. It's not about the length of time spent together. It's about the depth of impact created in those moments of presence. Absence has a way of magnifying presence. When someone is no longer physically available, the memories of their presence become sharper. Small details suddenly matter. The way you spoke, the tone of your voice, the warmth of your smile, things that seemed ordinary when you were around become extraordinary once you're gone. This is why people sometimes only realize the true weight of someone's presence after they've lost it. It's only in the silence of absence that the noise of presence becomes deafening. The power of presence is also timeless. It doesn't operate on calendars or clocks. Some people leave your life today, and years later, their presence still lingers as if they never left. A single memory can pull you back into the same emotions you felt when they were there. A single thought can make your heart race as if the moment is happening again. Presence is not bound by time because emotions are not bound by time. What was felt once can be felt again in an instant, triggered by the smallest reminder. And so, when someone lets you go, they may think they are choosing freedom, but they often underestimate the power of your presence. They think absence will weaken the bond. But in many cases, absence strengthens the memory of it. They cannot replace it because presence is unique. what you carried, what you gave, what you embodied. Those qualities cannot be duplicated. They can find another face, another hand to hold, another voice to speak to, but the frequency of your presence is one of a kind. And every time they encounter something that doesn't measure up, they are reminded of you once more. Memory is stronger than possession, because what truly lasts is not what someone could hold in their hands, but what they carry in their mind and heart long after the physical presence is gone. When a person has you physically, they can see you, touch you, spend time with you, and often they take that presence for granted. But once you are no longer there, once your footsteps fade from their daily routine, the memory of you begins to hold a weight that no physical possession ever could. Memories are invisible, yet they shape the way a person feels, thinks, and even makes decisions. Possession may end when distance enters, but memory remains alive, replaying itself in the quiet corners of thought, reminding them of what once was and can never be relived in the same way. The human mind has a way of preserving moments in a frame that cannot be broken. When someone remembers you, they are not just recalling facts, they are reliving emotions. They remember the way your presence made them feel, the comfort of your voice, the light in your eyes, the small details that seemed ordinary at the time but become extraordinary once gone. Possession fades because it is temporary, but memory holds because it is emotional. That is why someone can lose touch with you, lose physical access to you, yet still feel tied to you as if you never left. The memory lives in them stronger than the reality ever did. When you belong to someone's world in a tangible way, they may not have valued it fully because it was normal, consistent, accessible. But once they let you go, what remains is not the presence, but the impression. And impressions are far more powerful than possession because they cannot be controlled. You can give up someone physically, but you cannot always give up the feelings tied to their memory, even if they try to erase you. Even if they force themselves to move on, a part of you has already been etched into their story. The more they try to push the memory away, the deeper it carves itself into the subconscious. Possession is about control, but memory is about impact. You can hold someone in your arms, you can share time with them, but once that moment ends, the only thing that stays is the memory of how it felt. That memory doesn't ask permission to show up. It appears in dreams. It comes alive through triggers. It visits in silence. People underestimate this power until they find themselves haunted by someone they thought they released. They realize they can no longer touch the person, but they cannot stop touching the memory. They cannot go back to possession, but they cannot escape the pull of memory. This is why people find themselves nostalgic for what they once overlooked. A conversation, a simple smile, the way you did ordinary things, all of it becomes amplified in the absence. Memory does not fade the way possessions do. Memory sharpens. It takes the essence of what was lost and magnifies its value. And because the memory is untouchable, it becomes even more desirable. A person can't recreate it, they can't edit it, they can't relive it. They can only revisit it in their mind, and that revisiting grows heavier with time. Think about how many people can still recall vividly the one person who truly touched their soul. Even if years have passed, they may not have their presence anymore, but the memory has never left. They may not even want to admit it, but it's there. That's because memory does not obey the rules of time or distance. Memory obeys the rules of emotion. What was deeply felt becomes deeply stored. And no matter how many seasons change, the memory continues to rise like a shadow they cannot outrun. Possession can be lost, but memory cannot. Possession can fade in importance, but memory grows in weight. People may try to fill the absence with new relationships, new experiences, new distractions, but the memory continues to exist beneath it all, like an undercurrent pulling them back to what once was. That is why someone who let you go can still feel tied to you. It's not about holding you now, it's about holding on to the thought of you. And that thought becomes a prison because they cannot alter it, they cannot undo it, they cannot replace it. Even in relationships where someone thought they had control, where they thought possession gave them dominance, the moment you are gone, they realize memory holds far more power. It shows them what they lost. It reminds them of what they ignored. It confronts them with the reality of your value. Memory becomes a mirror they cannot look away from because it reflects both the beauty of what you brought and the pain of what they no longer have. Regret is the shadow of missed opportunities because every time someone lets go of a person who carried true value, the realization does not come immediately. It grows with time. At first, they may feel justified, they may feel confident in their decision, they may even celebrate their freedom, but as life unfolds, reality begins to whisper in their ear. They start to notice the difference in energy, the absence of what you once brought, the void that others cannot fill. And in those quiet realizations, regret begins to take shape. It doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it's not obvious, but it lingers like a shadow that never disappears, following them wherever they go, reminding them of what they lost when they let you go. Regret feeds on contrast. When someone has walked away from you, they may not feel the weight of it immediately because they are distracted by the idea of something new. They chase another relationship, another distraction, another illusion that seems more exciting. But once that novelty fades, once the illusion shatters, the comparison begins. They remember the consistency you gave, the loyalty you carried, the small acts of kindness they never valued enough. Suddenly, the ordinary moments they once overlooked become extraordinary in their memory, and regret sharpens its grip. That is when the what if questions start to rise. What if I had appreciated more? What if I had stayed? What if I hadn't pushed them away? Those questions are endless, and they never bring peace because regret is designed to keep the mind restless. The shadow of regret grows darker with every new failure they face. When new people don't measure up to the standard you set, regret reminds them of the decision they made. When life becomes heavier and they crave the kind of support you once gave freely, regret becomes louder. It does not allow them to rest, because the mind cannot lie to itself forever. Deep down, they know they lost someone irreplaceable, and that awareness turns into a permanent companion. They may pretend, they may deny, they may even blame you to ease their guilt, but regret cannot be escaped. It is tied to the memory of missed opportunities, and it will always rise when silence takes over. Regret has the power to transform the way they see themselves. A person who once felt powerful for letting you go eventually begins to feel foolish. They start to replay moments where they chose ego over humility, pride over love, selfishness over gratitude. They see the choices clearly, but too late. And because the past cannot be undone, regret becomes heavier with every reflection. This is why regret feels like a shadow. It follows them even when they move forward. No matter how far they go, no matter what they try to build, the shadow of the past is always there, waiting to remind them of what slipped through their hands. Missed opportunities in relationships carry a special weight because people are not things you can replace. You can lose money and earn it back. You can lose possessions and buy new ones. But when you lose a person who carried a unique spirit, a unique way of loving,